stay tuned because for the next 60 minutes, Motorsports Unlimited is on the air. Hi, I'm Jerry Bryant, and these are the lovely ladies of motorsports. And all this hour, we're going to have 60 minutes of action-packed excitement. All kinds of exciting things will happen. And we got the famous Bill Wildt, and we got all kinds of other good stuff that's happening all this hour. Motorsports Unlimited, 60 minutes of non-stop action. So let's go to the studio right now, huh?
Thanks, Jerry, and hi, everybody. Welcome to the studio headquarters of Chicagoland's most watched, most talked about Access television series. I'm Janine Lauschat, and this is the 1089th edition of Motorsports Unlimited. Today, we conclude our welding series. If you'll recall, we started with oxyacetylene welding. As a matter of fact, we produced 2 shows about it because Bill says it's the most important welding process and the one from which all others evolved. It's far and away the most versatile. In addition to welding, the same equipment can be used for brazing, silver soldering, bronze welding, cutting. Heck, if you're really good, in addition to steel, you can weld aluminum with it. If you can only have one, oxyacetylene is the one to master. Bill says if you can oxyacetylene weld, the others are easy. So, if oxyacetylene welding is so good, why stick welding? And today's focus, TIG welding. Follow along and find out. Once again, please remember this material was shot 20 years ago, and we did things differently back then. Watch.
Hi, I'm LaFrance-Smith.
I'm Corinthia Mora, and we want to welcome you to Motorsports Unlimited, Part 114.
Today we're going to demonstrate another form of welding.
TIG, or heliarc as some people call it.
Let's join Angie Kay, who will be on the left of your picture.
Chris Schutz in the middle and Bill Wildt on the right as we begin your introduction to this fascinating form of welding.
Hi, I'm Bill Wildt, and with apologies to Jen Gabriel once again, welcome to Motorsports Unlimited Part 114, and what we're kidding about is what, Christine?
We're going to do another welding show.
Yeah, another welding show, and Jan's had enough of the welding shows already. No kidding though, Jan, if you're watching, we are really getting to the end of this, although we're really not getting to the end of it, Chris, because we were just talking about it, and we're going to do TIG welding today, and that's all we're going to do. I'm not going to try to reach so far like I've been doing.
Finally, 4 shows later, you concede, right?
Right, I concede.
You can't do it.
We can't. So we're going to do TIG welding today, and for our audience, Angie, what is TIG welding? What does that mean?
It means tungsten inert gas welding.
Ah, okay. As I said in the show last time, Smarty Pants, what does that mean? What does tungsten mean?
I forgot again.
What does inert mean?
It's argon gas.
Oh, well, it can be a lot of different kinds of gas. We'll find that out in the show.
But the kind that we use is argon.
We're going to use argon gas in this show. Anyhow, what I'm teasing Angie about is that TIG stands for tungsten inert gas welding. And before I lose that thought, what I'm laughing about is there's also a kind of welding called MIG welding, which we're going to cover, and that's machine inert gas welding. And it's a different process, and I want people to understand how that works. And we're also going to demonstrate plasma arc cutting, which is something quite new and very affordable now. So
we got a long way to go, Jan.
Well, no. And Jan, I don't want to scare you. We're going to do this TIG show, and then we're going to do the machine inert gas and the plasma arc cutting together. So that'll only be one more.
Okay, sure.
Anyhow, let's get into this one a little bit. We're going to talk about tungsten inert gas welding, or it is better known as heliarc welding. Did you guys know that?
No.
Well, I
Chris?
knew that.
Okay, you knew that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why though? I mean, it's.
Okay, I will explain that to you.
At first I thought they were 2 different things.
No, they're the same thing, and I will explain it.
I'll help you, Bill. Hi, I'm May Chin, and heliarc welding was developed to weld aluminum. We'll explain the problem with welding aluminum in a moment. It has to do with oxide. In any event, the TIG welding process was called heliarc welding because in the beginning, the inert gas used was helium, not argon, thus heliarc.
Welding aluminum has always been a problem, and when we got involved with World War II, it became very obvious that it was going to be a serious problem because along comes the airplane, and there's all kinds of joints you want to weld on an airplane, and the airplane's got to be aluminum, so now it took some major effort as how the heck can we weld this stuff. The problem with welding aluminum is that there is something on aluminum called an oxide, and I'll refresh our audience's memory, we've talked about this before, that an oxide is the combining of oxygen with a material. Rust. is an oxide, okay? But you can't see it on aluminum. You can kind of see it, like if you've seen storm doors that are up for a long time, they start to look darker and darker in appearance.
Like that.
Right, well what you're getting there is that the oxide is getting thicker and thicker and thicker, just like rust getting thicker and thicker and thicker. It's essentially, it's transparent. You can't see it. And the way I wanted to demonstrate straight to the audience, this is just a piece of plexiglass. Normal piece of plexiglass happens to be smoked, but kind of imagine it's clear. I want to rationalize and say I use this one because it'd be easier for the camera to see.
Okay.
But the fact is it's the only one I had, so that's what we're using. Anyhow, this is a piece of plexiglass, and in order to understand what I'm talking about that's on the surface of aluminum, is think of it like this. This is the oxide, and this is the aluminum. Now the problem with welding, and we've been through all the puddling. Angie, you've become quite a puddler with the, okay?
Definitely.
Okay, and you understand what you do there is you put enough heat on it until you actually puddle the metal, put it into its molten state, right?
Right.
Okay, now, you can probably imagine that it's a problem then if we are going to try to puddle this aluminum, if we're going to try to make a little weld puddle there, okay, and aluminum melts at about 1200 degrees, depending on the alloy and all that, but let's say 1200 degrees. And this, it's transparent so you don't see it, but this is on top of that, but this doesn't melt until a little over 1500 degrees. Now you can imagine that's sort of a problem. Can you imagine
Yeah, it
putting
is.
1500 degrees, because what happens here?
That's already burning.
It just falls away. So that's a real problem then welding aluminum. The problem is, how do you get through the oxide? How do you get through that transparent layer and then to weld the aluminum? This transparent layer, again, I hope the audience understood that. That's just for graphic purposes. Getting through this layer is a problem, and it forms whenever the aluminum is exposed to the atmosphere, whenever the aluminum is exposed to air. So now here's the problem in front of us. We've got a metal that's light and strong and terrific for making airplanes, but we need to be able to weld it, and we can't really weld it in this atmosphere. Now, one of the answers would be maybe we could take it to the moon and we could weld it on the moon because we don't have any atmosphere there. Well, I'm serious. Can you see that that would solve?
Sure, if you can afford the rocket fare.
Right,
up there.
exactly. There you go. If affording that, so that's sort of an impractical solution. But we can kind of fool the material into thinking it's on another planet with a different kind of atmosphere. All right, Angie, if you'll reach behind you there and hand me that torch. That's the one. All right. Again, we have to always tell our audience that we're in very tight quarters here. Chuck, can you come in on a tight shot of this torch, please? So what the people, and by the way, I'm going to use the term heliarc, and I want to explain that because that's a common expression that we all use, those of us that weld, and it's not exactly accurate. It's accurate in that it was the original trademarked name for the process, and I believe, and I could be wrong here, but I believe Lindy is just one of the welding companies like Lindy and Miller and Lincoln. These are all major welding companies. Chuck, do we have a good tight shot here? Okay. Lindy, I believe, was the one that developed the process, and they called it heliarc because the gas that they used originally, the inert gas, was helium. So it's called heliarc, okay, helium arc. Now, Chuck, what I want to show the audience, is this in your picture here, or am I going to make you crazy and move it? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Can you see that? Okay. This cup, and I'm going to unscrew it, and this is a ceramic cup, actually is a funnel for the gas to flow right where the arc is. Now this arc is struck between this point on here, and again, I'm hoping Chuck has a tight shot in that. There's a point here. This is a piece of tungsten, all right? And we establish an arc between the tungsten and the material we're going to weld. And that arc is surrounded by gas, and in the case originally it was helium gas is what they used, so they called it heliarc, and that was the process. And
Why did they change it to argon?
The reason they changed it, I'm going to guess, and I don't know all the technical details, but I'm quite sure that Lindy, if they're the ones that did invent the name heliarc, was probably going to sue everybody for using their name or thing.
Okay.
So we better call it TIG welding, which is tungsten inert gas. All right. And also, we got away from using helium. That's another reason. We still use it. You can come off that shot, Chuck, if you're not already off. He's already off. He's way ahead of me. Another reason is we got away from using helium. Now, helium works very well. I'm sure, am I surprising anyone saying that helium is lighter than air? Do we all know that? Like helium balloons, they rise?
Yeah.
Okay, helium. So one of the disadvantages of helium is that the gas rises right away. So if we are welding in this position and we want to flood the weld area with helium, the helium is flowing away very rapidly, so we have to run a fairly high pressure to keep a lot of helium on it. Okay, helium also, by the way, is an inert gas. It doesn't burn or react with anything. So although I want to say this now, you still, in fact, welding companies very often do buy tanks of helium also, as well as argon, when they do overhead welding, because then you want the
rising.
the helium flowing
Oh,
upward.
okay,
Okay?
okay.
So, but argon is heavier than air. So it aids when you're doing a normal downhand weld. Now there are also, I don't want to get into all of this because again, and I hope our audience understands that I am not trying to make expert welders, anybody watching this. I'm trying to accomplish a couple of things. Number one, I don't want people to be intimidated by welding. If you're going to participate in motorsports, really at almost any kind, I don't care if you're doing go-karts or Indy cars or Formula One cars, you really need to know how to weld. You can't make cars or motorcycles, or you can't make them without being able to weld. So, and what I want people to know is don't be intimidated by the process. You can learn this. It's not that difficult. On the other hand, I want you to know something else. Those welders that have acquired the skills through the years, and we're just touching on how to do this stuff. And after you start doing it and you start having experience, you start learning about weld penetration, and you start worrying about vertical welding and overhead welding and all that. It is a difficult task, and those that can do beautiful work ought to be admired for that work. It is not easy to do it. Some of these guys are some real gifted craftsmen, they really are. And beyond that, to really be a good welder, you really have to have a lot of knowledge of metallurgy.
You sure do. You have to know a lot more than just the process of welding.
You bet.
You have to know what you're welding. And
you bet. For example, this happens to be a piece of 6061 T6 aluminum. This is an excellent structural material. I use it a lot of times. It's high strength, and it also welds beautifully. Now, if I were to drag out another piece out here that would look exactly the same as this, and it were 2024 aluminum, 2024 would look the same, but it's slightly harder. It's slightly stronger. It's an aircraft grade
and
aluminum.
if you don't know that ahead of time,
and it is not considered a weldable aluminum alloy, although I've welded it, and I've really had good success with it. But it's not what the designer had in mind for that aluminum. That's used for other purposes. So, and by looking at the material, you really can't tell the difference. And what I'm getting at is that a sharp welder really has to know these things, and he has to be able to. That's why I always recommend. Again, I get back when people learn how to when they start learning how to weld. Please do oxyacetylene. Don't cheat yourself, because you can see so many things in that slow developing puddle, and it makes a great weld, and it's the most versatile of all welding. You use it for everything, and you learn about metal. You learn what to look for. And the same thing here, when it behaves funny, all of a sudden you call back from your oxyacetylene experience and you realize you've got a piece of metal that maybe isn't what you expected it to be and all that. Anyhow, any of that makes sense?
Sure.
Okay. Angie?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you've really become quite a welder now.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. Now, the problem is, that's part of the problem, is that we're going to flood the area of the weld with argon, and in effect, the piece that you're welding, at least where you're welding it, thinks it's on another planet with another atmosphere. Now, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But that doesn't really get rid of that, instantly get rid of that oxide. The oxide is still kind of there, it's just that a new oxide won't form. So the second part of the problem on how to do aluminum was a way to break up that oxide. So what they did was, and again, we're going to explain this process, but what they did was you use this with an AC current, which is alternating current. And I'm sure our cameraman Chuck could explain this a lot better than I can, because he's an electronics and electrical guy. But it has to do with the way the electricity travels into the material that you're welding. With DC, all of the, I'm going to say molecules, electrons, travel in one direction. He's giving me a thumbs up, I said it right. All of the electrons travel in one direction. All right. With AC, it's an alternating 60 cycle per second alternating current, and that tends to break up the oxide that's on there. Now you've got it surrounded in a pocket of inert gas where the oxide isn't going to form, and this violent process of these electrons banging back and forth to the aluminum and back actually break it up like a shale surface. They actually break up that oxide, and because now it's surrounded with argon, it doesn't reform. So while you're welding and adding the material right there, you don't have that oxide. As soon as you've passed by it, it's reforming. The oxide is reforming on the weld, immediately. So, but I mean, it's clever. I mean, it's really interesting. I'd love to have talked to the guy that originally developed the process, how he thought of that, because it's really a good idea. Now, it causes a couple of more problems that this process, in that, all right, we have to have a torch then, like this, and we have to be able to flood the area where you're welding. You have to be able to flood that with this inert gas. So it means you have to have lines going to it. If you notice that we do have gas lines coming to this, we do have a gas line coming to the air, and the gas flows. But argon is pretty expensive. You buy these tanks of argons, and they're about $50 a refill on these.
$50, Bill? Boy, that was a long time ago. 20 years, remember? The last time he filled the same tank, it was almost $100.
So you don't want this stuff just flowing all the time. So you need some kind of a fancy arrangement so that the gas only starts flowing when you're going to weld, and it stops flowing when you stop welding. Right. Okay, and the machine has got that.
Can I ask Bill, why is there, if this only has like the argon, Why are there 3?
Good question. That was the second part of the problem, is that, now remember, with this kind of an arrangement, you can't really, well, I don't want to get into MIG, and I don't want to confuse the people with MIG welding, but with this kind of an arrangement, we're not using like stick welding where you had the consumable electrode. Remember, we just kept going down? So it means this torch is going to be right where the heat is continuously.
Right.
All right? You got to have some way to cool it. So the heliarc machine, or tungsten inert gas machine, TIG machine, also has to have a recirculating water system. They use antifreeze, obviously.
Oh, okay.
And that's what the hose is for. One is for water coming in, and one is for water going back. So it continually recirculates water throughout the...
Is the electricity and also the argon coming through one?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And the one is water in and water out.
Right, water in and water out to constantly recirculate the water to cool the torch, to keep it cool. It does a very good. Now, I want to also mention to our audience, and I don't get into specific brands or anything like that. Obviously, it's public access television. We certainly don't advertise. But I do want to say one thing, to watch yourself. Years ago, I picked up one of these little, there's all kinds of little rinky-dink manufacturers. It's one of the reasons, and people tell me I might be wrong, it's one of the reasons I'm real skeptical about these 110-volt MIG machines that they've got out now that are popular and all that. I'm skeptical about that stuff because I've been burned before, and I've always said I've never spent too much on a tool, but I've spent too little a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I bought one of the little rinky-dink outfits, you know, you two can hit. Well, the problem is it doesn't have a way of turning the gas on and off just when you're welding, and you can do a $50 tank by forgetting, just like that. You'd be amazed how quick it'll seep right out. That's one thing. And it doesn't have a water-cooled torch and a water cooling system and all that. So maybe you can only weld for a half an inch or an inch, and your torch is overheating. So it really is Mickey Mouse. Yes, though the principle is the same, and you can do a little weld with it. I mean, the principle is the same, but it really is necessary to have all this other stuff. It's just something, if you're going to get involved with heliarc welding, you have to bite the bullet and have a good.
But there are smaller units than what we have here, right?
This is, and I'll get into this, is a real excellent unit, and actually it's perhaps I'm so high on it, maybe because it works for the kind of work I don't. Anybody that knows me knows I hate production work. I mean, if I don't want to make 2 of anything, I love the challenge of making 1 of something.
Right.
But I love doing prototype work, and I can't stand doing production work. So I have no interest in a MIG machine, inert gas. We'll get into that. That's really its best values for production work. I have no interest in that. I like doing prototype work, and this thing is beautiful for it. And what it gives you is it gives you the ability literally to make metal behave like solder. It's really quite
This machine isn't overkill then, because I know how you are. You want the one that does everything.
Yeah,
but for someone that wants to buy a heliarc machine, they don't have to have something this elaborate.
No, not this elaborate.
Okay.
And also, as we go to the last show, they might say, well, Bill Wildt, I understand what you're talking about, but a MIG machine is fine for me, and they're very inexpensive and all that. We're going to get to all that, okay?
Yeah.
But for my purposes, for doing prototype work, one-off work, this machine is unparalleled. I love this machine. All right, now, so we've got the problem here then is we have to establish an arc between the metal and the electrode. And let me show you the electrode. This one looks a little bit different. Now, remember you guys last week, I brought this out just to show you. You guys last week, or actually it's probably by the time this is aired, 2 weeks ago, something like that, we're doing stick welding, and these were the electrodes, right? And these were consumable, and as the filler rod was inside of them, and you're right, you remember all that? Okay. Now this is also an electrode. All right? Now this is quite different than what you were used to, or what you were dealing with before. The reason this one is different is because this is not consumable. We want to establish an electric arc, and by the way, we are talking about heat here, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 degrees. We're talking about serious heat. So you can understand that's really quite a piece of metal that can handle that without melting or anything. I mean, it really handles a great amount of heat.
In other words, tungsten is quite tough. It would have to be.
Well, obviously, yes, and that's the reason tungsten is used. Now, this one happens to be, you know, I'm not good with people's names if they're just Jones, and now I'm going to say...
You're gonna show off right now, right?
Yeah, I'm going to try. Thoriated, did I say it right?
Right.
Did I?
Yeah.
Okay. What we're laughing about, let our audience in on the joke, is that there are essentially there's actually 3 or 4 kinds, but for purpose of our discussion, the 2 most common types that a welder that does heliarc work will use is tungsten, pure tungsten, and what's called 2%. And I must admit, I had to go and look up the word because I've forgotten it 20 years ago as to what it was 2%. What was 2% of the tungsten? And it's thoriated, and that's what is it, thorine, or what are they? Help me.
Thorial, I think.
Thorium or something. Anyhow, is added in between 1 to 2% of it instead of being pure tungsten. And what it does is it gives the electrode the ability to carry electricity better. Same size metal, same size everything, same power settings and everything. You can reduce noticeably, you will reduce the amount of amperage you have to use if you're using the 2%. It's amazing. It really does. It makes the stuff
In other words,
conduct
is that what you should use?
Well, for steel.
Oh,
for
okay.
steel.
This is
Right.
complicated.
Well, it really isn't because, again, I don't want to...
But like you mentioned earlier, though, you have to know a lot of different things.
Right. If you're going to
That's
pick
for
up
sure.
steel, you want 2%. If you're going to
Okay.
and if you're going to do aluminum, you want pure tongue. Although I've
Okay.
welded lots of aluminum using the 2%.
If everything were perfect, that's the way you would like it to be.
Exactly. But if I'm in a
Right.
real awkward position and I can't get to it and I don't, it's all I have, and I'm,
Right.
okay,
Okay.
it can be done. But no,
Okay.
but it does work. And this gives you the ability to sharpen it. And Chuck, I'm going to ask you, maybe against Chris's T-shirt, can we see this? Can you get in tight on that? Just so we can see if it's got a point. I want him to see it sharpened like a pencil. Okay, he's giving me a half of a, okay, maybe it's not that sharp. I hope it is. We won't stay on the shot that long. Anyway, this is one of those things that you grind into a point on a grinder. And by the way, boy, does it chew up grinding wheels. This stuff is really hard, all right?
Okay.
So it chews up, anyhow, and the pure tungsten, which I'll show you in a few minutes, the pure tungsten, you don't grind into a point. In fact, it forms a little ball on the end of it all the time, and that's for aluminum welding, and that has to do with the fact you're using alternating current instead of direct current and a number of other things.
Okay.
Okay, again, we don't want to try to make you experts. I just want you to understand a little bit about what goes on here. Now, I see by our clock on the wall that we're going to have to change tapes here in a moment, and you know the way that we like to do this. We like to take and put something in between us coming back. I have no idea what we're out of music pieces, but maybe we'll have
Yeah,
one.
but we have a few potential things that you will be able
Okay.
to, that you're going to be getting.
Okay. Folks, don't go away. We'll put something in here and we'll be right back.
Well, Bill, we're not going to have time to put something in because we talk too much on the show.
That's right, and we want to take a moment to show our audience the difference between the consumable electrodes used in the stick welding show and the non-consumable tungsten and 2% electrodes used in TIG welding. In the smaller ones, one of them is pointed and the other one has a ball on the end.
And these two don't look anything like the others. I hope Bill will explain these later in the show.
Now let's return to the shop and learn more about TIG welding.
I hope that was a good piece that we put in there. I have no idea what it's going to be. But let's get back to this right now because time is fleeting by again and we haven't even started welding yet and I'm getting nervous we can't get the whole TIG show on
will.
one. Yeah, you bet. I'm going to do it no
We'll
matter
make
what.
sure you do.
Okay. Okay, so I've already explained that we need water, we need all that kind of stuff, right? In order to weld with a heliarc machine.
Right.
Okay? And we've explained the purposes why. Is there anything I've left out? Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't I demonstrate a little bit of welding with it, and as I go, if I think of something,
Explain as you go.
I'll explain as I go. Angie, if you would, there's a couple of pieces of steel over there, square one. They're 1 inch square. Don't break your neck. Right? No, up, higher. Right there. No, the square ones. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. All right, this is just some 1 inch square mild steel tubing. And in order to weld this, we've got to do a couple of things. We've got to give this, obviously we've got to puddle it like we've explained in all the previous shows, right? And I think, let me see, what would be the easiest way? Can I slide by you or is that going to be too hard? Why don't you stay right there and hold the torch? Hold the torch. All right. We open up the argon. Okay. And by the way, I should point out again to the viewers a couple things that when cost comes into mind, and we can't get a shot of it, unfortunately. I don't think. Maybe I can move something here a little bit. I don't know, Chuck. Can you get a shot of the regulator from the argon bottle? Okay, yeah, he just suggested to me that why don't we do it as a cut shot. Good idea. In fact, Chris, I was going to give you a piece of paper this time and mark down all the cut shots we talk about so we don't forget as we usually do. In any event, that's another thing I wanted to mention, that when I bought the regulator for the argon, you have a choice there again of a single diaphragm or a dual diaphragm regulator. I bought a dual diaphragm. I recommend that's what people buy. I really think, because you don't buy this stuff to use it for a year or 6 months. You know, you buy it, maybe you have it for your lifetime. So buy something decent quality. Plus the fact
Bill's right about that.
time
It's
you
20
cannot
years
fail,
later
you
now,
have to
and
have
he
it, you
still
know?
uses
All
the
right.
same TIG machine
As
and
we look at
still
this
loves
panel,
it.
And Chuck, can you get this on the on the shot? You'll have to kind of nod your head if this is a do. Okay, he's giving me a thumbs up. There are a number of controls here. Again, we're not going to try to make you an expert welder. If we have enough time on this show, we'll come back and do an explanation about what the pulsar is and what a pre-flow timer is and a spot timer, post-flow timer, and the balance control, and we'll get into that. But we're going to keep this real simple. This welder has two ranges, a high and a low range. We'll leave up into high, and that's the outside white band here, and that's the number of amperes. Right now it's set, and we can just, by turning this, we can set any number of amperes we want. And for what we're doing over here, I'll probably set it at about 140, although certainly that's going to be way too hot, but I'll show you why this is just a basic setting, and then we do it with the foot pedal. So this is high, telling me I'm on that control. We're on straight polarity. We won't get into all that. Straight polarity is what you'd use 90% of the time anyway. And we've got it set up on AC, and I'm going to change it to DC because we're going to weld steel first, and then we'll talk about the aluminum. So push this control down to DC for direct current. One of the things, by the way, you can always tell when a welder using a machine of this nature is doing AC welding, you get a constant buzzing. It's noisy. Whereas DC welding is almost silent except for the flow of the gas. Okay, it's almost dead silent. Okay. Up here, we've got the high frequency. We've got it on start. The purpose of the high frequency is, well, I'll explain that when I'm over there. Remind me when I'm about to strike an arc. I want to explain what the high frequency control does. But you have a choice. You can have it on start or you can have it on continuous. We've got it on start for right now. That's all I think I really need to explain over here. And I'm going to turn the machine on.
Bill, does it make a difference? Like you said it on 140 amperes. Does it make a difference what you have that on, being that you regulate it with the foot pedal?
Yes, it does, sort of. And let me step in between you girls, because I like it there. Yes, it does, because the range that you have with the control, I mean, this isn't exactly a Swiss watch, although it is a real fine adjustment. But if I've got it turned up to 375 amps, and all I'm looking for is 50 amps, boy, is that hard to control just at the beginning of the pedal. Right. So what you want to do is set it for about, now I know that for something like this I'm probably going to use 110, 100 amps, so I'll give it a little extra in case I want to get it started quickly and then back out of it a little bit, okay? Anyhow, that was a good question. Angie, could you get the welding gloves over there, please? Don't trip. Right there. Those are the ones. No, just these. Ah, you're right though. Bring me the hood. Yeah, you can come back from. All right. Again, I want our audience to know that this kind of welding is big time light, and you can permanently damage your eyes just by looking. Just by looking. So you don't do that. Now there are some forms of welds that aren't that serious, oxyacetylene weld, but as a rule of thumb, don't look, because you might not be expert enough at welding to know what you're looking at, and you're going to end up injuring your eyes.
Don't look into any weld.
Yeah, don't look into when people are welding.
Right.
And on Heliarc, now this, as we've demonstrated to you girls, these masks, you almost can't see through them. You can almost hold them up to the sun and can't see these are real dark, whereas for oxyacetylene welding, it's almost more like a sunglasses kind of a deal.
Right.
So it does make a difference, okay? Now, Angie, you guys need your shields also. You remember this, Chris, is getting to be part of the costume?
It is.
Yeah, I
and
know.
we're not done this week either. We're still going to do more.
That's right.
I tried to give these back to Chuck a month ago. I didn't know you still needed them.
Right, so, all right. Also, obviously, you wear gloves because, you know, we're talking about big time heat here. We're talking about big time heat. And again, as I've explained before, you don't use a piece of coat hanger. You use a proper welding rod. This happens to be mild steel welding rod. You use welding rod. It has to be the same as the base metal that you're welding. Okay.
And it looks like it's copper, but it isn't. That's just the outer coating.
Exactly. That's just
protect it from rusting. Or?
Yeah, it's just a plating to protect it from rusting. That's all it is. All right. Now, so that you don't, because you don't want to contaminate these electrodes. All right. These things are non-consumable, but they are sort of a pain in the neck because they can contaminate it all the time. Get a little pop or something like that. They're contaminated. They have to be ground down again. They're expensive, you know. So you don't have to touch it to the steel in order to establish the arc. You've got a high frequency unit on any good Heliarc, and I keep saying Heliarc or TIG machine, any good TIG machine we'll have a high frequency unit on there. And what that does is I'll bring it down and apply a little gas pedal, and you'll hear, just for a moment, you'll hear zzz while it establishes the arc, and then it goes dead silent. That zzz is the high frequency, which allows the arc to jump without actually touching the metal.
Okay.
Now when we do aluminum welding, we run it on high frequency all the time because it's alternating current, and you've got that violent process of the electrons going back and forth and breaking up, and you want to keep that weld, the arc established, okay? All right, now, Angie,
That's the part that the camera
yeah,
doesn't like.
Need some help
yeah,
there.
you're not going to be able to see there, so step over here and watch from here, right there. And you don't have to worry, there's no sparks on this stuff. You can come in close on it. And Christine, so you can see, go over there. Right there, and hold that up over your eyes now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I've got it just about, and again, the rule of thumb here is about the thickness of the electrode is the distance you hold it away. I've got it held away a little bit, all right? And I'm going to pop my shield down, and I'm going to step down on the accelerator pedal, gas pedal as I always call it, just a little bit. All right, now do you guys see the arc?
Yes, we do.
Okay, no problem seeing. Now do you see that there's no puddle yet?
Right.
Okay, can you see that, Angie?
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to step down harder on the pedal. You see the puddle?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to step down even harder. You see how quick you can blow that open?
Right. Oh, wow, you had the hole now.
Okay, what I want
Really fast.
what I want you to see is it only happens with the accelerator pedal.
Right.
That's what does it. Is I push down more and more. This is like when I had you doing the oxyacetylene welding. You control the temperature of the flame. You just keep stepping. The more heat you want, you just step down. If it's too hot, you just back off on the thing. So you can literally establish the puddle nearly instantly and move along with your weld. And when you're welding aluminum, it's real important to have that fine of a control, and we'll get into that. Now I'm going to weld along here a little bit and show you what we're doing, okay? All right, now do you see the puddle?
Bill created the puddle and is adding a filler rod to the leading edge as he moves the puddle along.
See the filler rod going in?
Yeah.
In order to stop it, all you do is let off on the gas pedal, okay? Does it look simple enough?
Yeah. It's a nice, neat weld build.
Okay, Angie. Come on over here. Hey, Christine, you're going to have to take her microphone.
Okay.
All right. Now, let me see. How can I help you on this so that we don't have to put a hood on you?
Well, I can close
Would
my
you want?
eyes.
Do you want me to hold that for her?
No, because you have to hold your own.
Well, I can hold both.
I can hold this.
You can hold this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Help me with this thing here.
All right, let me get on the other side. All right, go ahead and put your foot on the foot pedal. Okay, now hold it up, and I'm going to help you with this, just so you get the right height on it, all right? Now what we're going to do, well, I should really, let me clamp that solid. Yeah, you don't want to hit the foot pedal before we're ready, or we'll light up like a Christmas tree. All right? Now I'm going to hold it
scare
down, and
her.
I'll tell you when to give it some pedal. Okay, give it a little pedal. A little more pedal. More pedal. Okay, more pedal. Now I can't see the pedal, so you have to tell me, does it have a pedal?
Yes, it does.
Okay, now you go ahead and move it along. And add more pedal so you get a feel for that. More pedal. Okay, lift off on the pedal.
She's real good at puddling.
Now, was that hard?
No, not really.
Okay.
It would be easier if we weren't wearing heels, but
Don't give the audience any ideas. I'll be getting letters that the girl shouldn't be dressed like that to do this. We know that. We know that. This is for doing television, not for welding. Christine, you want to come around here, please? Sure. Angie, maybe you. take the mic and go out there. Christine, put your foot up on the pedal. Okay, now you can hold that up and hold the torch. Okay, and again, I can't see the puddle because my vision is directly blocked. Can you see it from there, Angie, or do you need to get on that side?
Well, I could see it when she was doing it.
You could see it from over there. Okay?
Your mic fell off, Bill.
That's because I'm stepping on the mic cord.
You probably noticed our video equipment doesn't like the high frequency used to establish
All right,
the arc.
now, same thing, you got to hold that up, and when I tell you, I want you to give it some gas on the gas pedal, okay? Hold that up in front of your face. Okay, give it a little gas. Step down.
Trying to.
Give it some gas. Now I can't see it. Do you have a puddle?
Yeah.
Yes, does.
Okay, go ahead and move it right along. Don't lift it away, just move it along.
Don't let go of it, though.
Don't let go of it?
No.
Okay, go ahead and step on it.
Oh, I can see where you could really burn through there easily.
Okay, go ahead and lift up. Lift off on the pedal.
I can see with this process you can burn a hole in there so much faster than you can doing the oxyacetylene. It's unbelievable.
Right, and the same thing with the puddle. Now, you remember the time that it took you guys, and Chris, would you step back over here again then?
I can try.
Okay, now the same thing then, when you guys were doing the oxyacetylene, you remember how long it took to establish, to get a puddle going? Especially now, this is like that thicker material that you guys had, remember? Once a person gets familiar with welding, now I'm stopping and taking time and showing you guys and all that kind of stuff. But once a person gets familiar with welding, they literally pop up to the thing like this, cover your eyes. All right, if you'll notice, it is a nice clean weld, no slag, it's even width. These are terrific machines to work with. They really are. But again, I don't want to encourage people to go off and get started on something like this because the metal does things too quickly, and you don't learn. It's really much better if you have something that works slower and does a good job, which oxyacetylene does, and you can see how metal behaves. Okay. Now, if you guys want to step back here, I'm going to shut the machine off for a minute. And in a very few short seconds here, we're going to have to take a moment to unwind all of our cables because we're getting hopelessly entangled here. Worse than the other shows, it seems. I don't know.
That's because we've got all of these.
Yeah,
Wires,
and it doesn't help that I dropped my mic.
Well, that's okay. You talk pretty loud.
Yeah, I know. You should talk. Who's the one person that doesn't have a mic and is perfectly audible? Okay, that's how you heliarc or TIG weld steel. Any questions at all? Okay, one thing I will tell you, Christine, would you go over and get that board over there? That piece of wood that's got the electrodes on it?
Yes.
Yes, that's it. All right, and Chuck, I wanted you to get a tight shot on this if you can. To contrast this, we'll put up against Angie's yellow shirt, or is it better against the red? You'll have to tell me. Does it work okay against the yellow? Yeah. Or is it better against the red? Yellow. Okay. Can you see that there's a little ball on the end there? Okay. Now this is pure tungsten, not 2%. This is pure tungsten. We use this for welding aluminum, and that's what always happens to the end of the pure tongue. In part because it's the way tungsten behaves, and in part because we're dealing with an alternating current, where the current is going out and back in, out and back, instead of all just in one continuous direction. So it tends to hammer the nose of this thing a little bit as it's going back and forth. The same as it breaks up the oxide. Yeah. Okay, and we're going to be doing that. Also, the where's the torch? Okay, if you hand it to me, be careful. It might be hot. Might is the right word. And I've burned myself so many times over the years with this. Oh, here's a tip I can give even guys that are welders that are probably saying, this guy can't tell me anything. Maybe I can't, but These things work very well. This is, I mean, all the companies make them now. This is a metal shielded ceramic cup. All the rest of these, in fact, when we come back, 'cause we're going to have to break here for a minute to change tapes when we come back, all of these are ceramic. And believe me, when you're welding along, it doesn't take very long. They'll be glowing cherry red hot. The problem with ceramic is if you even touch it against something, especially when it's hot like that, it breaks off. And these things are expensive.
That easily?
Real easily. They're very fragile. So these were the...
How many have you broken, Bill?
Well, I'll tell you what, I was really happy to find these with a metal shield around them. I wouldn't have thought that the metal would hold up, but it holds up very, very well. And that is this one
Protects the ceramic.
protects the ceramic. That's all it does, because obviously it doesn't handle the heat like ceramic does, but it protects the ceramic. And I probably had this one 3-4 years. So in the other ones, I probably can't get through 2 or 3 weeks with them. I'm kidding, but I go through them quite rapidly. The other thing is the electrode itself. This unscrews so that we can take the electrode out, and we're going to change it. In this case, we're going to put in the tungsten, but also this is for one specific size. Now we're taking this one out, the 2% out, and we're going to put the pure tungsten in. Okay, and by the way, pure tungsten is always marked with a green, although I don't think I want to be that, the other stuff is marked with red, so I don't want to think it would be that. We don't have to make people experts here, but, and that just screws in. This holder though,
What would happen if you used the wrong electrode, though? If you were going to start welding aluminum and you forgot to change your electrode and you had the one in there for the steel, I mean, what would happen?
It kind of works.
Would it be obvious that you
I think you're going to need. I think that you find out real quick that you didn't change it, and what you end up doing is contaminating the tip. You can weld with it. I've done it. You can do it. But
nothing catastrophic happens.
No,
so, I mean.
no, but these things are expensive, and to do a little weld and then have to chop off 1/4 of an inch of the thing because you were too lazy to change it, you know. But the thing I wanted to say is these little holders in here, you have to change holders for different sizes. Now, I don't know if that will show in the camera shot, and Chuck, you'll have to let me know again here. We'll try this. Can we see that electrode is much thicker, much larger in diameter? Is that visible? Okay, and is a much larger diameter, and in order to change to a larger diameter, like if you want to go up to this one here, we could probably use up at 300 amps, 325 amps. You've got to have a larger diameter electrode, and that takes a different electrode holder, but it all screws into the same torch.
And you're going to the larger one because now you're going to weld aluminum?
No, I'm not going to the larger one. I'm just showing it.
Oh, okay.
Right.
In other words, you're just changing the electrode, but
just
you're not...
the electrode. I'm not changing the holder because I'm using the same. I try to pick things that are like average.
Why would you, under what circumstances though, would you want to change it?
Well, if I wanted to weld something like 3/8 of an inch thick aluminum plate,
okay.
I'd have to go something much heavier, right?
Okay.
Sure. Okay, we're getting a signal. It's time to put something else in, and we've always got something. If all else fails, we've still got that Angie video footage. Folks, don't go away. We'll be right back, and we're going to weld aluminum.
In order to properly weld aluminum with a TIG machine, you need to change electrodes from the 2% used for the steel to pure tungsten used for aluminum. You can tell the difference by looking at the end. Pure tungsten forms a shiny ball.
Once again, I hope we put in something very creative. Maybe we had to haul out the old Angie video stuff. I mean, I'm still hearing about it. You know,
people would never get tired of seeing it.
No, but that's not what I. Well, anyway. Anyhow, let's get right into this. So we're not going to have enough time to do this. Christine, you've got the torch. Angie, if you would get me that piece of aluminum over there, the round one. Right there. You know, you've got a real problem with round and square. This is the one you were going to pick up when I said the square one before. All right, we'll get rid of this piece, which is really, really hot. We don't really need that.
Still?
Oh, sure, that stays hot for a while. Okay. All right, we'll clamp this down. Now, one of the reasons I'm not welding on this piece, Christine, is why? Because that's a nice piece of 6061 T6 aluminum, and I'm not going to ruin it just to show this.
You're supposed to sacrifice for the show.
No, I'm not going to sacrifice that.
So you found a piece of junk that you're going to
I got a piece of junk, an old piece of aluminum pipe that I'm going to use.
I never would have guessed.
All right, I'm over here now, and we've got to make some changes to this machine. Remember I told you we have to weld it on AC now, right?
Right.
We need the alternating current. So this lever, and I'll step out of Chuck's shot if you've got that in a shot. Have you got that, Chuck? Yeah, 1 minute. He's going for it. Okay. Move this up to AC now. For that thickness, we're probably going to be right at about 140 amps, but I'm going to bump it up a little bit so I can control it with the foot pedal again. You always want to set up a little hot. And we move the high frequency to continuous because we want that thing to be buzzing continuously. All right. I wonder what that's doing to our audio, by the way. Chuck, did you notice anything? Yeah.
I bet the video isn't going to like the continuous high frequency.
I think I'll mention this real quick while we're over here, while we've got the camera shot over here. A couple of things real quick. Pre-flow time and number of seconds. The purpose for that is that if you want the gas to flow before the arc starts. Now remember I told you before, one of the things that the little junky machines don't have, they don't have a way of starting the gas when you start. The way this machine works is when you hit the gas pedal,
It flows.
and it also does the electricity at the same time. But if you want the gas to precede the electricity for something that's real critical, and there are many kinds of metals that you'll weld that you'll need, like I do magnesium welding. You want the pre-flow on. In other words, when you tap the pedal, it delays the electricity coming in and lets the gas flow ahead of time. It's a pre-flow of it. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Okay, pre-flow. That's what that is, and you can set it up to 15 seconds on here for pre-flow. Not using it for this. This is pretty normal stuff. Spot timer, that's another kind of welding. We'll do that with the MIG show because that'll be a quick demonstration of what spot welding is, okay? But this is for spot weld timing here. Post-flow time. That's when you've completed the weld and you've broken the electrical current by lifting the gas pedal. That lets the gas keep flowing afterwards if you want to hold it right there to let the puddle totally cool before you let it be exposed to the air again.
What good would that do?
Again, you need the mic thing.
I mean, why would you want to do that?
Because some the titanium, for example, if you're going to weld titanium, you cannot let that stuff be exposed to the atmosphere at all, including in the cooling process. So when you lift, no wonder
titanium then is so difficult.
Well, it's really not difficult.
Temperamental.
You just have to know how to do it. That's all. And it is very sensitive to any kind of
contaminant,
air and oxygen getting at it. Okay. But we're not going to do that for, like I say, this machine has a lot more stuff on it than most people need. It's also got this AC balance on it. I won't get into trying to explain that, but it has to do with the process. One of the problems with welding aluminum is that it doesn't tolerate dirt. And the reason it doesn't tolerate dirt is because it melts at such a low temperature. It melts at 1200 degrees, and most of the grime and stuff is going to take maybe 1800, 2000 degrees to burn that up. So because it won't tolerate that stuff, it ends up in the weld puddle and contaminates the weld puddle. Many welding shops won't even...
Does it still make a puddle though?
It'll make a puddle, but it'll be nasty. You can see it all in there. You can see the black particles and things
what
in there.
What if it was something that, in an area where you weren't going to see it? Is it,
it's weak.
It damage? Oh, it weak? Oh, okay.
It makes the weld porous and it contaminates the weld. No, it's not just a matter of, we're not just talking about the physical appearance, we're also talking about its strength. All right, so this machine has the ability to alter the electrical cycle to have more electrons flowing up than flow down. Rather than
Is that right?
Yeah, a normal 60 cycle thing, the electrons are back and forth, equally spaced and all that. Well, with this thing is you can have a longer time coming up than going down.
And how do you know how you want that to be?
Well, that does take experience. As I say, this is way more welder than a normal person getting started needs. No. Okay, so we'll ignore that one for right now. We just set that on the standard setting. Starting current, again, we're using a pedal here, so we control our own starting current. We give it a little dab to get it started. We're doing that all by ourselves. But in welding applications where you would have the thing preset, you wouldn't be using this pedal here. The start current would let it start softly and then go up to the current you set. So, I mean, it's really nice.
On its own?
On its own. Well, you set the amount that you want here, the start current that you want. Okay, it also has a thing here called crater fill. One of the things when you're welding aluminum, you get to the end of the puddle. If you don't have a foot pedal arrangement like this, you've got to just set it a thing and you pull the torch away to break the thing. It'll form like a crater. It like sinks in. It's unattractive. It's not an attractive looking thing. This thing, you flip the switch on, and when it breaks the current, it doesn't do it rapidly. It goes very slowly, so that puddle.
Well, I've seen you use everything that this machine has to offer, and it really is a nice piece of equipment.
No, this is nice. There's no doubt about it. Like I say, but nobody needs this. For what I do, it works. But okay, so that's what the crater fill is, and again, I already told you about that. The last thing I'll tell you about, and I'll show you that hopefully at the end if we've got time, and I can see we're using up time like crazy again, is the pulsar. It's something that I don't really use at all, but as I said, I've been burned so many times in my life of not spending enough for a thing instead of spending too much.
Yeah, but that's really neat to watch.
But yeah, and it's good for an amateur getting started. The pulsar is good for an amateur. It gives a nice, attractive looking weld. I'll step over, that's okay.
It gives you a little bit more time.
Right, and one more thing I'm going to explain. Angie, could you give me that wire brush over there? I should, you think I'd have more class than to show my crummy wire brush, but I'm going to anyway.
Gets the job done.
Thank you, Angie.
If you had a new one, you probably would have lost it.
Well, right, or I'd use it up again. Angie, can you see what it says there at all that's just barely readable? Christine?
No.
It's from years ago with felt marker on there. Okay, it says aluminum only. The reason being, again, it is real critical. Aluminum can't be dirty. It's real critical. And if you're going to wire brush something to take something off of it and everything, if you use one that you use on steel and everything, you're just grinding those particles right into the aluminum. So you always keep a brush around that's aluminum, and it's not the greatest thing in the world either, because then you're going to end up with particles on here that you've taken off of something else.
Remember I was wire brushing?
Some of the stuff on the table at the beginning of the show.
You did that with this brush? Oh my God.
No, because I was just going to say, remember when I was...
I thought I was doing a good deed.
Wait a minute.
I was painting all this stuff.
Wait a minute, Krista.
Here we go.
I thought I was doing a good deed. When I first came into the garage, I just started...
See, not as experienced of a welder as you thought. Anyway, no big thing, because as you can see, there's not much left of this one anyhow, and it's been so contaminated for so long, it doesn't make any difference. But I do want to tell the people that it's absolutely essential with aluminum that you keep it clean.
She used his aluminum-only wire brush on steel.
Apparently. He was really nice about it, though.
That's because they were on camera.
And again, I'll throw in another little tip here for the people that are experienced welders out there, something they might not know, that the rod that I use, and you have to select the right one. You have to ask at the welding store when you buy it. I always use, well, it's not that's just this particular brand comes out flat like that.
Okay.
But the important thing is that I always want to be able to anodize. And one of these days we're going to show about anodizing, showing people what that is and how it's done and everything. But if you want to anodize it afterwards, if you don't use the right rod, if you have this anodized gold, the weld will come out black. Oh yeah, so it's important. Again, a welder does have to know a lot of things.
So in other words, you have to know these things before you weld.
Exactly. Now, almost all the rod that I buy, except for the rod that I use for gas welding aluminum, but all the other stuff is for anodizing. Although I must say, now there are some people that use that as an attractive thing. I've seen some beautifully done parts with very attractive welds, and the welds were deliberately done with the rod that wasn't for anodizing, and it looks real sharp actually having the black weld all the way around.
Boy, would that be a surprise if you expected to get your
You bet
piece
it
back
is.
all gold and
gold.
it's got black all
Exactly,
over it, right?
Exactly. Okay, again on this, now we've changed the thing around a little bit, and Angie, can you flip the switch on? There's an on and off switch there. Give you a new challenge here as a welder. There you go.
There you go, Ange.
And if you let me have my helmet. Yeah, I don't know if you
I don't think it...
I don't think you passed. Put the switch on.
Watch with the rod. You're trying to poke my eye out with that rod.
Go ahead.
What did I do wrong?
I want you to flip it on.
Wait, which
Maybe you better get around in front of it and turn it on.
It flips hard.
Oh, it's this one
Yes.
here. Oh, I
What-
flipped that one.
Oh no, we better turn that off, or I'll be real surprised at what
Yeah.
happens. Yeah. Yeah. See, it's
It's hard. Bill, be careful with the rod.
Okay.
You're going to have viewers complaining about poking out girls' eyes.
Matter of fact, good idea. You better go over there. Angie, you better go over there. Okay. Same thing again with the foot pedal. And by the way, Chuck, have you given the audience a shot of the foot pedal at all? Why don't you give them a shot right now?
It's obvious that our videotape machine does not like the high-frequency switch set on continuous.
It sure doesn't. So Bill's going to have to give it a try without the high-frequency feature.
Well, girls, as our audience has probably already seen, the videotape machine does not like the high frequency at all, not even one little bit. So I'm going to try to do this without the high frequency and see if we can successfully do it, all right? All right, Chuck, you have to tell me, what did it do that time? I liked it okay. All right, we got a decent weld down also.
Was there a noticeable difference now that you turned the high frequency off? Could you see a difference when you were welding there?
No, not really, but Angie, matter of fact, we checked you out, you turn it off. Okay, not really, but you have to understand that I maintain just about an exact same distance of the torch over the
To summarize the last 4 weeks, Bill says if you want to learn how to weld, start with oxyacetylene. It's the most versatile and teaches you everything you need to know about welding. As a matter of fact, TIG welding is almost identical in technique to oxyacetylene welding. Stick welding, we covered last week, is fast and strong, but not pretty. So there you have it, oxyacetylene, stick, and TIG, the most popular forms of welding.
Of course, as always, we don't have enough time, but we want to be sure to acknowledge those who helped digitize and update this classic Motorsports Unlimited episode. Tom McGrady, Art Lauschat, Sue Cassanda, our webmaster Frank Barbalace, and Samantha Bentley. Special thanks to JBTV's Jerry Bryant. Music is created for us by independent artists Roger Pauley and Jerry Herbert. Of course, we have to take a moment to thank the stars of this edition of Motorsports Unlimited. Chris Schutz, Angie Kay, May Chin, Corinthia Mora, Nanette LaFrance-Smith, and our host, Bill Wildt. Me, I'm Janine Lauschat, taking just a moment to acknowledge the work of those who participated in the original production crew 20 years ago. Robert Stout, Dan Schmidt, Frank Lombardo, Chuck Itzenthaler, Mark Spitzak, and Ken Sawinski. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
This program made possible in part by support from PB Food Products, located on 47th Street at Western Avenue in Chicago, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from J.C. Whitney & Company, located just off I-80 at the Utica exit in LaSalle, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from Jimmy's Red Hots, located on Grant Avenue and Pulaski Road in Chicago.
This program made possible in part by support from the Chicagoland Toys for Tots Motorcycle Parade, held on Western Avenue in Chicago, the first Sunday in December.
Motorsports Unlimited is produced by Bill Wildt, president of the Motorsport Advancement Crusade.
This program made possible in part by support from ABC Auto Parts, located on Ashland Avenue at 138th Street in Blue Island, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from Bridgestone Firestone and your local Bridgestone Firestone tire retailers.
This program made possible in part by support from Copy That, located in the County Farm Plaza at County Farm Road and Army Trail Road in Carroll Stream, Illinois. Motorsports Unlimited was created to raise public consciousness, understanding, and appreciation of the motorsport community and their activities. You can contact us by email at msutv.com, or you can write to Motorsport, P.O. Box 66242, Chicago, Illinois, 60666. We enjoy hearing from our audience. Please let us know what you think.
Next week on Motorsports Unlimited, we're going to bring you our coverage of the 2006 and 2007 Legends of Chicagoland Motorcycle Racing Brunch. Yes, it's basically a Santa Fe Speedway reunion, but it didn't start out that way, and it's much more. We'll explain next week on Motorsports Unlimited.
So that's it, another edition of Motorsports Unlimited and the lovely ladies of motorsports. And be with us next week because we'll have something real exciting. Bill Wildt's going to have the lovely ladies, and just about anything can happen right here on Motorsports Unlimited. Every week at this time, we bring you the best in motorsports. So be seeing ya. Bye-bye. And keep on rocking.